Hey guys, it's JC Theater Yu-Gi-Oh! Here today, coming at you with an Odd Eyes and Endymion deck profile for you. These guys, to me, synergize quite well for the fact that not only are they both pendulum-based archetypes, but they also run a lot of level 7 monsters in their decks, so together, they're just a bunch of level 7s, really. Of course, not all of them are, but for the most part, and since Endymion's like spell cards going off, and Odd Eyes love going off, I think they are a match made in heaven. Without further ado, here's the deck profile. First up, we're going to start with the Odd Eyes monsters. So 3 Odd Eyes Pendulum Dragon. The good part about him is during your end phase, if he's a pendulum card, you can send him from your field to the graveyard, you can destroy him, and add 1 pendulum monster from your deck to your hand with 1500 or less attack. So he lets you search during the end phase, plus he's a level 4 scale. The other Odd Eyes monster we're running is Phantom Dragon, which if you have Odd Eyes monsters as both your pendulum scales, when your monster battles, it can gain 1200 attack if Phantom Dragon's one of those Odd Eyes scales. And finally, if Arc Pendulum Dragon is one of your scales, when an Odd Eyes monster is destroyed on your side of the field and sent to the graveyard, you can special summon an Odd Eyes monster from your deck onto the field. So not only do you get a body on board, but you also get a search if you have this in your pendulum zone and then you use Odd Eyes Pendulum Dragon's effect. The reason these guys are good is because they require themselves to be in your pendulum zones. And you may be thinking, but the Endymions also require that. But once you get enough spell counters on the Endymion monsters, they special summon themselves onto the field, so that leaves that spot open for your Odd Eyes monster. For the Endymions, I run 2 Magister. Once Magister, when it's in the pendulum zone, once it gets 3 spell counters on it, you can special summon him out onto the field, as well as 1 monster from face up in your extra deck. Since you need link arrows or an extra monster zone open in order to bring that monster out, I have this card at 2. The only reason he's really in here is he's an Endymion and his scale is 8, so you can still pendulum summon level 7 monsters with him. Next up, I have 3 Servant of Endymion. She's actually, I feel like there's potential for her to be hit one day on a ban list, because if she's in the pendulum zone, once she gets 3 spell counters, which I did forget to mention, every time a spell card is activated, they gain 1 spell counter onto them. So once 3 spell cards are activated after she's been activated on the field, you can special summon her and 1 monster from your deck. Any monster you choose. Next up, we play 3 Reflection of Endymion. Not only is she level 7, but if she gets 3 spell counters on her, you can special summon her from the pendulum zone and 1 monster from your hand. And finally, the Mighty Master of Magic himself. You can remove 6 spell counters from your field, from your entire field, not just him, in order to special summon him from your pendulum zone, and then you count the number of cards you control that have a spell counter and destroy up to that many cards on the field, and if you do, place spell counters on him equal to the number of cards destroyed. He's definitely a little bit of a powerhouse there. And then his monster effect, once per turn, when a spell or trap card is activated, you can return 1 card you control with a spell counter to the hand, and if you do, negate the activation, and if you do that, destroy it. He's definitely a good negation, and he's also level 7, so that always helps with some cards you'll see in a sec. Next, for the non-Odd Eyes or Endymion monsters, I have Abyss Actor, Curtain Raiser. If you have no monsters on the field, he's just a free body on board for a link summon. And then I play the 1 Jackal King. Jackal King can be special summoned out by the effect of Servant of Endymion. So you don't need to run the baby Jackal in order to special summon him out onto the field. Jackal King is good because each time a spell card is activated, you place 2 spell counters on him, so that furthers Master over here as well as his own effect. And once per turn, when your opponent activates a monster effect, you can remove 2 spell counters from the field to negate that activation and destroy that card. The final trio is going to be Magical Abductor. Each time a spell card is activated, you place 1 spell counter on her when she's in the pendulum zone, and then once per turn you can remove 3 spell counters from her and add 1 pendulum monster from your deck to your hand. So she's basically a generic searcher, and since this deck thrives off of making spell counters, it works out. The spice level that I have in this deck is I run 2 Performapal Odd Eyes Synchron, the monster that is part of 3 archetypes. His pendulum effect is where it's at. Once per turn, you can target 1 Performapal or Odd Eyes monster you control, and that face-up monster is treated as a tuner, and its level becomes 1 until this guy leaves the field. The reason that's important is since we run so many level 7s in the deck, you can have a level 7 on the field, one of your level 7 Odd Eyes monsters on the field, use this guy, and you can make a level 8 Synchro monster. It just adds extra utility, and I just think it makes the deck a little bit more fun. So first off, we play 2 Terraforming. Terraforming is good because not only does it search, but it also is a spell card, so it adds to that spell counter total on your field. And what we search is Magical Citadel of Endymion. Magical Citadel, each time a spell card is activated, you place a spell counter on it. And if a card with spell counters is destroyed, you place those spell counters on it as well. And then once per turn, if you would activate a card effect by removing spell counters from your field, you can remove that many spell counters from Magical Citadel instead. And finally, to wrap that all up, if this card would be destroyed, you can remove 1 spell counter from it instead. You want Citadel out as soon as possible, so that way you can take full advantage of getting the spell counter. I do like searchers in this deck, such as Spiral Flame Strike, which lets you add an Odd Eyes monster from your deck to your hand. The reason why I like searchers in this deck, though, is because they allow you to not only get spell counters, but also on top of that, actually get a card. You actually get use from it. It's a similar mindset to the Toon Table of Contents, where you use it to search itself to finally search like a Toon Cyber Dragon or something, which I do side, but I don't know. Toon Table of Contents kind of does nothing, whereas this gets you an actual good card. That's the same logic behind Spell Power Mastery. But Spell Power Mastery goes a step further because you can add 1 Endymion card from your deck to your hand, and then you count the number of Spell Power Mastery and Spell Power Graphs you control or have in your graveyard, and place that many spell counters among cards you control. Basically, not only do your own cards that add spell counters add the spell counters, but Mastery adds more on top of that, and you get to search an Endymion. Finally, for my draw cards, it's going to be 2 Sacred Sword of 7 stars, which lets you banish a level 7 monster from your hand in order to draw 2 cards. And then 2 Allure of Darkness, which lets you banish a dark monster and draw 2 cards. The reason why I play both of these at 2 is because we don't exclusively have level 7s, and we also don't exclusively have dark monsters in the deck. So this is kind of a happy medium. You'll either have one or the other, as well as one or the other's target in your hand most of the time. We're just going to run through the extra deck quickly. I have 1 Heavy Metal Foes Electromite, always good in any Pendulum deck. 1 Beat Cop from the Underworld, because honestly, since we do run some dark monsters in the deck, and it's just generic link materials, since we are running dragons and spellcasters, and some of them, not all of them, are dark monsters, it's just good arrows in this deck. Obviously, if Electromite wasn't at 1, this would just be another copy of Electromite, but since it is at 1, you gotta make with what you have. Next up is the new Daybreaker the Shining Magical Warrior, which works good with your spell counter effects. If a spellcaster monster is special summoned to a zone he points to, you place 1 spell counter on that card, and you can remove 2 spell counters from this card to target 1 card on the field and destroy it. Not to mention, when he's link summoned, you can already place 1 spell counter on him, and he gains 300 attack for each spell counter on him. So ultimately, he's just a link monster that actually works with the spell counter strategy, which I think is quite neat. Since we do play a decent amount of dark monsters, however, I do play the 1 Wee Witch's Apprentice again for the link arrows. And then we do play a lot of high-level monsters, so a little spicy option here is the World Gears of Thorological Demiurgy. It takes 3 level 5 or higher monsters, and he's just a big dude. For the level 7, or should I say rank 7s, I have 1 Draco Sack, 1 Big Eye, 1 Red Eyes Flare Metal Dragon, and then 1 Odd Eyes Absolute Dragon. The highlight of Odd Eyes is that if his Xyz summon self is sent to the graveyard, you can special summon 1 Odd Eyes monster from your extra deck, which will be Odd Eyes Vortex Dragon. Odd Eyes Vortex Dragon, when it's special summoned, you can target 1 face-up attack position monster your opponent controls and return it to the hand. And during either player's turn, when a spell or trap card or another monster's effect is activated, you can shuffle a face-up pendulum monster from your extra deck into the deck to negate that activation and destroy that card. So he's a free negate basically once you make this rank 7 here and have it sent to the graveyard. You could even link this away. Another route you can take is, instead of summoning Vortex Dragon for whatever reason, you can summon out Meteor Burst Dragon. And when Meteor Burst Dragon is special summoned, you can target 1 card in your Pendulum Zone and special summon it as well. So at the cost of, say you make this guy and link it away for whatever reason, you can bring out this guy and then he brings out another guy. So they're all just a bunch of Odd Eyes friends coming to the party. The 2 level 8 synchro monsters that I've decided on so far in this deck is the 1 Stardust Dragon and the 1 Beels. I do have 2 spots left open for any other level 8 synchro monsters you'd want to run in the deck.